Hey, I'm Charlie Paparelli, and welcome to the Charlie Paparelli Show. I'm so glad that you've joined me. This show is all about entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs. I've been an angel investor for over 25 years, and during that time, I've learned from entrepreneurs how to start from scratch and how to build some really great companies of really great value. And we have a guest today that actually has done that, and we're going to hear more about it. But if you'd like to not miss an episode of these, you want to get every one, please subscribe at paparelli.com. Simply submit your email. You'll get notified on the show. You'll also get my blog, which comes out every Tuesday morning. My guest today is Greg Smith. Greg is currently a guest lecturer, a professor of entrepreneurship at Clemson University. He's become an expert and successful investor in cryptocurrencies. He's a very active angel. He was, I'm not sure, we're going to have to get into that today. I'm not sure if he is or he was a very active angel investor in early stage startups in the technology sector of Atlanta. He was the founder and CEO of Advectis, with a very successful exit to Xerox Corporation, where he served for 3 years as the vice president and general manager of that division. He's a friend. He's a true servant leader. He's schooled in engineering, but he's quick to say, look, I'm not an engineer. But I can tell you, on my side, he thinks like an engineer. Greg is one of the most gifted and humble entrepreneurs that I am really blessed to know. And he's a great business leader. Today's topic, to that end, is a play on servant leadership. I'm calling it the servant entrepreneur. So welcome, Greg, and thanks for coming to share with me and with my audience.
Charlie, great to be with you. Thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be on this show with you, and I appreciate it.
Wow, I'm honored that you're honored. That is really cool. So why don't we start with just a little bit of like what you're up to these days?
Well, I'm still teaching at Clemson. I'm in my 7th year. I teach a 1-hour elective on Monday nights. It's entitled How to Start a Startup. It's for undergrads, and it's just a teaser course on, if you're thinking about getting into the startup world, some of the things that you might want to think about. And we use some curriculum from Y Combinator, some of the Y Combinator videos that we kind of vet. And then anyway, it's been great. And I've really enjoyed that. I'm also pretty active at my church, North Point, and in several different ministries around that. And, as you mentioned, I'm an angel investor. I still have quite a few investments.
That one of the ministries that you're involved in, isn't it? What's it called? Starting Point? Is that the name of it?
Well, that's a program out of North Point, which is basically a safe place for people who have questions about God and this Jesus thing to come and ask all those questions that they might be afraid to ask in a.
But were you leading that?
Farm. Yes. In fact, I'm starting another group a week from Thursday.
So this is the ministry that you do.
This is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's pretty cool. So what else? What else you involved in?
Well, as you probably know, and mentioned, when the pandemic hit, I started looking at the world and trying to figure out, the world didn't really make sense to me anymore. And I started studying cryptography and blockchain and some of these Internet 3 payment layers that are emerging. And so I've kind of gone down that rabbit hole over the last 22
one of the
months.
things that you shocked me with is you said, after you had sold Advectis, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Advectis.
Yeah. Is, a lot of us, what we do is we wind up, we're not investors really at that time. So we're operators. So we give our money really to wealth managers to manage for us. And I remember when this whole thing started, you said to me, I'm done with, and of course, wealth managers, what they're all about is this, they subscribe to a philosophy called the balanced portfolio.
Right.
And I remember talking to you around that time, must be mid 20s or late 20s. And you said, I'm done with this. These guys aren't getting any kind of returns for me. I'm just satisfied. What did you say? And then I was shocked. I said, like, God, he's taking on complete responsibility for wealth management.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to disparage wealth managers because I think there's a very significant role that they play in a lot of people's and families' lives, and they're generally very positive. But for me, as you mentioned, there's this balanced portfolio, which is good on the surface. But what I'm looking for now, Charlie, and the way I'm wired as an entrepreneur is, the Wayne Gretzky quote, what made you so different? And Wayne Gretzky said simply, I didn't skate to where the puck was. I skated to where the puck was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that there's a lot of things changing in the world right now, and it behooves each of us to kind of weigh those things in our own way and look at, do the things that I invested in the past make sense for the future? And so, so I've made changes in that.
But
And
okay? So, and that makes sense. And I know you, and you're right. You're somebody who's always looking for the opportunity, if you will, for returns. But what was happening with this wealth managers? Okay,
there's nothing wrong with my wealth manager. I just want to be sure that you.
No, I do get that. I think you explained that well. You said, but they weren't doing this piece that I had. My piece being, let me say it this way.
Well,
what were your goals? What did your goals become that said, I need to make a change here because it doesn't match my financial goals, and I don't see with their methodology that I'm going to get there. That's another.
So let me use an example to make my point.
Yeah.
Back in the early 2000s, Amazon was growing, was not making money, had no dividends, and a lot of wealth managers were like, "Why are you going to invest in that company?" Right? I mean, it makes no sense. In the short term, it makes no sense. There's nothing there. They started off as selling books online. That's not solving the world's biggest problem. And yet, if you held the course and projected into the future what that entity might become, and just kept a little bit of that stock, I mean, it's grown at a pace. So I think traditional financing looks and uses the history as a predictor of the future. And I think we're at an inflection point where that is not going to work as well in the next decade or two that it has since the end of World War II.
Yeah,
which really,
one of the things that I did, I am with wealth management. Okay. And what I do is I remember way back when I said, look, why don't you take the majority of this stuff and I'm going to take off a piece. And it was a substantial piece. And I said, I'm going to do angel investing. You don't lose my money and I'll build my wealth with angel investing. And that was the plan that I had. From time to time, though, it's interesting. You mentioned about seeing these companies. I remember at the end of, it must have been 2009, after the recession kind of bottomed out a little bit there, and it was kind of starting to move a bit. I remember Google was at $250 a share.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Google's not going anywhere. I mean, that's got to be a great investment, $250 a share. And I remember talking to some wealth managers, and they're like, things just can't keep going up, and there isn't enough people, and they had all kinds of reasons. And I went, that's not what I'm doing anyway. I'm investing in startups and not investing in stocks. And I passed on that. And here I am putting $250,000, $500,000 in companies, right? That have very little chance of success. And I don't put anything to Google. Now, what would that have been worth over time? Because it doubled.
You don't want to think about it. You don't want to think about it.
But it is interesting. That's the view, though, I'm saying, between sort of the wealth management and sort of an entrepreneur kind of a deal,
Well, I think some of the same characteristics that good entrepreneurs have, where they project the future. If this, then that. If this, then potentially that. And for me, it's about, and why I'm really interested in this crypto space is I feel like it's extremely risky, but it's an asymmetric risk profile, meaning if you can stomach the volatility, the direction is north over time. And not everybody can stomach the volatility, and that is a key component of getting into anything early. Amazon had 70 and 80% corrections along the way. Okay, there's a lot of gnashing of teeth when that happens.
Why do you think that? It is interesting. Why do you think that the direction is north? Because one of the risk factors that you always hear about crypto is that these countries are not going to give up control of currency, right? They're just not going to do that. And because it opens up all kinds of issues for them, okay, at that point. So, you get China who says, no more, we're not doing this. Okay, you can't do it here. You get enough countries that kind of play that game, big ones like China, US, name them, Western Europe. That seems to be the biggest rip, that it can almost go to being just a few guys just trying to assign value to it.
In a country like China, where everything is controlled by a single party, where they literally control everything, you can do that. They have successfully done that. Now they can't take the crypto away from people that already have it, but they can prevent them from converting it to currency on an exchange or what have you.
Right.
But in a free country, that's really largely frowned upon. Okay. And there will be more regulations coming in this industry. And the industry, to grow into what I think it's going to be, is going to need some guardrail regulations, But I see a lot of the blockchain technology as the foundational building blocks for the next generation of software for the world. And that will be decentralized rather than centralized and owned by
Why don't we explore that a little bit? Because you talked about a technology. You're not talking about crypto here. Crypto is based on the technology of blockchain.
But crypto is software.
Crypto is software. Why don't you explain this idea that as you look forward, you say, I'm skating towards where the puck is going to be. And blockchain seems to be where the puck is going to be. Why don't you talk a little bit?
At a high level, what blockchain allows to happen is for me to, in a trustless way, be able to send you, somebody I don't know, payment for a good or service. Okay. Blockchain enables that. The first blockchain application.
It doesn't make sense. You could do that now. Why do I need blockchain?
Yeah, you can do that now, but now we rely on middlemen called banks. And like, Charlie, if you're traveling to London and you lose your wallet and you lost your phone too, and the only number you can remember to call in the States is mine, and you call me and say, Greg, can you wire me some money? I'll say, sure, Charlie, what do you need? And I'll send it over there. And that transaction through the banks will take 2 days to clear. 2 days. Okay? That's a lot of people. If you think about when the banking system was created, literally in Italy in the Middle Ages, it was, I don't trust you, so I need somebody in the middle that I do trust to make that transaction with you, and you trust them. I only have to trust you, the bank.
Okay.
I think that era,
but the bank actually provides some, this idea of trust, but they provide some protection.
They do.
Right. So if you say like, so there's a benefit. They're not just a middleman, just sort of taking my money and giving it to you, kind of a thing. They take on some responsibility. Yeah.
If you ask me today, we are in the wild west of this. This is in the unregulated early stages of this technology adoption curve. So there's still a lot of issues around it before it can go mainstream.
But keep on I don't want you to get off your example here,
but what I'm
explaining this blockchain stuff. Okay, go ahead.
The in my opinion, this is my opinion, the existing financial system has tremendous inefficiencies in it
Okay.
that can be overcome with technology today. Blockchain is the first one, the first emerging technology that really enables a peer-to-peer transaction to take place without having that intermediary that takes a cut. And
So is this disambiguating? Is that the word disambiguate? What's the word I'm looking for?
disintermediation.
Disintermediation. Is this disintermediating the banking or the middleman in effect, right? There's the
I believe banks will migrate as this technology continues to get traction. The banks will change what they do, and they will either adopt and join into this in some way and provide other services. I don't have it all figured out, Charlie. I just see the big macro movement around this of being.
So what you're
We're
saying,
in
what's really interesting is that you could send me money to London because I'm kind of stuck. And if you send crypto, I can have it that minute.
And then you can go to an exchange and turn it into British, pounds immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the other thing that's really exciting about it is think about the third world where they don't have banking systems that they can trust.
Right.
They don't have a way to store value of their work. But now with crypto and a mobile phone, that becomes available to them.
But how do you deal with, again, one of the things that you said earlier is, and I'll tell you, I didn't expect to get into this like this, but and we're going to move on from it. But
Yeah.
but how do you deal with the like you said, there's so much volatility. I can't be in a situation where you pay me, okay, and I hold on to this crypto thinking I'm going to use it to pay somebody else, and what I do is I take a 30% downdraft, the day after, right? So it's
That's
like,
right.
wait a minute, because
No, that's
bread
right.
costs still costs what bread costs, I got
No,
to.
that's right. And there's
There's so with these other currencies, right? These fiat currencies that we have around there's the volatility is fairly narrow, even though we think it's big, except in
it's
places
because
like
you're
Turkey
using.
or yeah.
I want you to change your mindset just a little bit. First of all,
Sure.
I agree with everything you're saying. Today, the value of crypto relative to fiat currencies, you're fixing the point on the fiat,
Yeah.
okay? And you're taking the volatility around fiat. But do you realize what the central banks around the world have done in the last 22 months and how much new currencies they've created? And we can see that in the price of cars and houses and even milk at the store, right? But
Yeah, they're literally printing currency, just
right,
flooding the market with with more
that's
currency.
correct.
Right.
And I would argue because there were not a lot of alternatives. I'm not
Yep.
faulting them
Right.
for that. I just think we have to look at the reality of the situation. And if you take Bitcoin, for instance, it's a finite supply asset. There will only ever be 21 million of them ever created on the planet. We already have created 18.8 million of them. There's only 90 of them created a day. Okay. And every 4 years, the amount that's created in a day is cut in half. So it's
Wait a second.
something that
Where does this 21 million number come from?
it was programmed by the creator of Bitcoin when it was created
Yeah,
in
but I
2009.
have, for example, a friend of mine. You happen to know him. He lives up there. He's created a business now which has some ridiculously high valuation. Just raised $200 million at over $1 billion valuation, and he is one of those Bitcoin miners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin has a finite end from the mining perspective,
Yep.
what is it that
That's in
what is
2140 when that'll happen. But yes,
what's 2140?
that's when the last Bitcoin is mined
How do you know
or
it'll be
fractions of it.
2140? If you got more and
It,
more
it,
people mining, wouldn't they come sooner and
it's
sooner?
it's programmed into the protocol every 4 years due to Moore's law. Moore's law essentially was programmed in, or a version of Moore's law was programmed into the protocol at the very beginning. So as computing power continues to grow, the difficulty factor or the payment back for the mining of and securing of a block is reduced every
So if
4
you come
years.
to this point of diminishing returns, which makes it harder and harder and harder, and you become getting fewer and fewer coins. So
That's
why is
correct.
his
Which
business worth north of $1 billion?
his business?
Yeah, this mining business that he has.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but Bitcoin Bitcoin is 13 years old. Okay. 13 years old. I can't remember the exact year, but it was like 2011 or 12. I don't know exactly. It was worth like $1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Today it's worth like $42,000. Now it's been as high as 69,000, and in the last year probably as low as 30,000.
Mm-hmm.
But it is it is the asset class that is appreciated the most in the shortest amount of time in the history of the world.
I'll give you that.
And it's the most secure network of any network in the world.
Okay.
So, and it's being adopted at a rate, beyond Moore's law. There's this concept called Metcalfe's law, which is really how Internet 2.0 companies that are, like Facebook and Google, that are really valued on the number of users, not on a metric of a P&L metric as much. It's more like what's the value of the network, and
I get what you're
how
saying.
fast does the network grow? That's something called Metcalfe's law. Well, the adoption of just Bitcoin, forget the other currencies, they're growing even faster, and many of them, is faster than anything else that's ever happened. It's like 100% a year.
Well, what's the last question on this? And we're going to move on. I
We
want to
do
go
need
back to
move on.
entrepreneurship. I know. But the last question is, what is then the threat against this this cryptocurrency world? Like the greatest threat.
The permanent, like a permanent threat or a tactical threat?
I don't know. What's the difference?
I mean, like one of the things that really impacted Bitcoin negatively in 2021 is China said you can't mine Bitcoin in our country anymore. So all the miners, like half of the hashing rate or the mining capacity at the beginning of 2021 was in China, and that all had to move out of China somewhere else. And so that was a big hit to the whole thing. Now, the good news is going forward, the majority of that hashing power moved to North America. So that is not in China anymore. It's actually here, which I think is a very good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it moved around the country. It moves to locations where electricity is cheap because, that's where it moves. So a lot of it's going to Texas.
So what's the threat? What's the threat then? Go back to what's the threat?
The long threat on a fully decentralized platform, you cannot shut Bitcoin down now. It's too late.
Okay.
It's decentralized. Nobody owns it. You can own the coins, but nobody owns the company. There is no company.
Right.
So, but more centralized platforms where there's a company behind them, I mean, the regulations could actually shut those down, just like they can shut down a company today if they needed to. So, but I think there's a trend in this space.
Regulations can shut them down
If they're centralized, if they're owned by somebody, a company. Okay, so there's different, without taking your whole time here, there's different crypto platforms that some of which are owned by companies or closely held in some way, and some that are completely decentralized that nobody owns them. The owners of the network are the owners of the coins. Okay.
Wow.
And so the more you go towards the decentralized spectrum, the more difficult it is to shut down.
Well, what other applications do you see going forward, getting off crypto for blockchain technology?
Um, well,
What are
I
we going to
think,
see that companies that we never even heard of today that we go like, of course, that's the way you do that.
well,
You
I
know,
mean, if you look at some of the problems, look at some of the inefficiencies that we have to deal with. Like Charlie, you recently, a few years ago, you bought your new place. They had to do a title search, right?
yeah.
They have to do a title search because the records might have been tampered along the way, and there might be a lien on that property that we didn't know about that might rear its ugly head later.
Hmm.
Well, if I own a piece of property and I register it on a blockchain so nobody can change it, you can't. The way blockchain works, you can't change it. You can. There's a record in a ledger. A ledger is like, think of a big spreadsheet. Every time that changes hands, there's a change to the ledger, but you can never go back and change the ledger because it changes everything after that point. And again, we're getting off track, and that's a whole nother lesson. Um, but I think that real estate will be registered on blockchains in the future,
Okay.
and there will no longer be a need for title insurance because we will know who the rightful owner is. We will know whether there's a claim on that property, and it'll be absolutely visible to us in a ledger.
It'll just take time
It will.
for these records, okay, some of which they go from manual, right, to some automated, to then getting to blockchain, which
Yeah,
is going to be purely digital, right? So was
and
this
it's
like
managed.
is this a 50-year thing or a
Well, I don't think it'll be that long, but think about it. That's normally controlled by counties, and so some counties are more forward leaning and some are not.
right?
So it's going to take time.
Huh.
It's normal technology adoption curve will apply here. There'll be some innovators, counties that will do it
Wow.
first.
Well, this is
And
like
then,
mind blowing stuff. I mean, getting onto see, it reminds me of when I remember back in the early. This is probably a bad example, but maybe it isn't. But back in when I was moving out of corporate and trying to figure out what my next step was going to be when I was 40. So this is 28 years
Mhm.
ago. I remember multimedia was
Yeah,
like this really hot place to be. And this is when we had CD-ROMs and all this stuff.
yeah,
And I remember doing research on it. And Scully, who was then the CEO, what was
yeah.
his first name? John Scully,
John,
CEO of Apple at the time. He said he was quoted in a presentation saying multimedia is going to be a zero multi-billion-dollar business. And what he meant by that was it's not in and of itself something of great value you build a company on. It's something that's integrated in everything that we do.
I see.
And that
Mhm.
sounds to me like blockchain, that it's an underlying technology going to be used in, literally millions of places, okay, for economic opportunities, but there will be a business that uses that technology to provide their service or their product. You see?
I'll tell you what I think, not what I know,
Does
but what
that
I
make
think.
sense?
Absolutely.
Oh, it does.
I
Okay, good.
think, I believe blockchain is the most significant technological innovation since the internet.
Yikes. Okay.
I might be wrong, but that's what I believe.
So when you hear some company now, one of the things you got to worry about when you hear some company saying we're blockchain based technology, I think the first thing you got to say is, well, everybody's going to say that now, right?
What does that mean to you is the next question.
Exactly.
Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
But that should get our attention, right? As an investor, you should say, "Wow, tell me
Well,
how you're using it and why it's unique and how it's going to make things more efficient." More importantly, how is
blockchain,
it going to disintermediate what's already there?
yeah, again, blockchain, there are centralized deployments of it and decentralized, but sometimes you can use blockchain. Blockchain is a more sophisticated, maybe that's the wrong word, but you're replacing a database with it. Okay. Some applications are better suited to a database. So it's not one size fits all. There's still going to be, you know, needs of just, you know, um, databases. But it does stretch the capability of what we can do and problems that we can solve that heretofore we haven't been able to solve in
I
an
have never
efficient way.
heard. That was the first time blockchain made sense to me. Okay, so what it's doing is it's solving some of the limitations of databases is what it's solving. That's the problem it's solving.
It is, and it can reduce, if not eliminate, the ability to trust a third party in a transaction, which is extremely important to remove inefficiencies and middlemen from processes.
I love it. I love it. And it is right now. You're right. It's the wild, wild west.
It is the Wild
I
West.
just recently got ripped off by somebody, you
Oh
know,
yeah,
here I am, a fairly sophisticated, computer user, investor and all that. And I still fell victim to something. And after I did, it cost me like $800. And after I did, it was something I was buying. And after I did the transaction, I was kind of rushed for things. And I said, I just need to do this. Then I went to lunch with somebody. And while I'm at lunch, I said, I just got ripped off. I mean, I just, And I said, I rushed back, tried to go to one of those intermediaries to solve the problem. It was too late, and it was over. But you just,
yeah.
with this wild, wild west aspect, you just do have to be careful.
You have to be very careful, and you have to know that you're probably going to lose some money along the way. You lose some, but that's the ticket price you pay to be in early.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right. So let's go on to what you're doing at Clemson. I like what, I hear about these professors that I've always seen, professors of entrepreneurship and all that. And you didn't characterize it that way. You're teaching a course that's really about how to start a company, right?
Yeah, and things to think about when starting a company. Again, we're using materials out of Y Combinator. And Y Combinator, by definition, they want to incubate and launch unicorn billion-dollar market cap companies. If it's not that big, okay, that's not their goal, right?
Right.
So our class,
so they're not trying to start service. They're not trying to start services companies that are going to do $5 million a year, right?
Correct. So our class takes the materials of that, and then at the end of each class, we contrast what we've learned about whether or not those principles that we learned in that class apply to a lifestyle business. Because a number of the students in every class I teach have already started their first business.
Okay.
And they have it in, it might be an apparel company they're launching. It might be one of my students a few years ago started a bakery, a high-end bakery, and whatever it might be. But it's typically a lifestyle business if you're still in school. It's not, it's not a tech startup that has the potential to be a unicorn. So we compare and contrast that because not everybody's going to work for a unicorn company or be involved in a startup.
Give me, when you say you compare and contrast, you said at the end we do that, we contrast it.
Yeah.
Meaning you're telling them one way. Go ahead.
We'll have a topic that will, be taught from an entrepreneur that's launched a big company. And it might be, sales, early stage sales. It might be getting an idea. It might be, do you patent your technology or not? It could be any one of a number of different topics. Product market fit. How do I get product market fit? Well, how does that now, once we've gone through that using a technology startup as the basis, what works and what doesn't work with a hair salon?
Okay.
What do I learn about that applies or doesn't apply? And so I used to say, does it apply to this or not? Now I say, give me the things that might apply to a hair salon and give me the things that probably don't.
So
I want them to just think about that.
So that makes sense. Okay. So you say, we're going to cover a methodology that's intended, okay, to be based in starting a technology company that's going to become a unicorn or $1 billion.
A big company, yes.
Right. So here's what it takes to do that, because that's what Y Combinator is all about out there in San Francisco. So then you cover all of this. You probably have people come in as guest lecturers and stuff like that.
We do.
To cover these different elements. And so here I am. So now my head's filled with this, build it to the sky thing. And I'm sitting there going, I really want to start a bakery.
Yep.
What do I learn? How do I connect this up here, build it to the sky with, look, I need to learn how to sort of buy an oven and get a storefront, right? Or whatever.
Or how do I, how do I price it?
That's the problem with these books, that are being written, all written so that we're all going to be, Bill Gates or they're going to be.
Most of us aren't.
Most of us aren't, right? So we're not going to build something like that. We just want to start a business, man. I don't want to work for somebody. I think I'd really enjoy doing this. Correct. So how do you go from this big idea down to just that? So how do you contrast that to kind of get it on the ground for these students?
Part of what I try to do in that class is to get the students talking, and I, part of their grade is participation. So, So I tell them at the beginning of semester, which my semester starts Monday, your job is to review the materials and come prepared for every class. If you're not going to do that, then drop the class, take something else.
Okay.
But if you're going to be here, I'm driving from Atlanta to come meet with you. That's what I want you to do to make this class better. You got to come prepared.
And what are the materials, by the way?
They got to watch a video. Basically, it's anywhere from 30 to 45-minute video. That's a Y Combinator video, and
that's it.
And then they take a 10 to 15 question quiz. I've learned that undergrads, you got to give them quizzes or they don't do the work. Grad students, you can kind of get away with that, but undergrads, you got to measure something, and it helps that everybody prepares if they know they got to take a quiz. So that's what we do.
Okay.
And then
we have the test that they actually did the work to prepare for this thing.
Well, they know that if they're going to take a quiz, they can drop 2 of the quizzes, but if they're going to take a quiz, they're going to watch the video. And if they watch the video, the class makes sense.
But you're not asking them a lot. I remember talking to somebody who was getting a PhD in English, and I said, so how many books do you have to read every week? And I think it was something like 3 to 5 books a week. You know what I mean? Very different, okay?
No.
You got to watch a 30-minute video. I mean, that's like nothing.
So, it's really good because, again, these undergrads don't have a lot of classes with instructors that have come out of the world of which they're learning about. Like a marketing professor may have never practiced marketing outside of an academic environment.
Right.
Same thing in the sciences, whatever it might be.
So how does that help these?
The generation right now, they want to learn, and startups are very popular. People, young people are interested in startups. It's changed a lot in the last 20 years.
People interested in startups, or are young people interested in being called an entrepreneur?
Okay, that's fair. I don't know. That could be. It could be.
Because I always hear people, that sort of like they want the identity of entrepreneur, but they don't really have an appreciation for the difficulties and challenges of startup. Getting something from nothing to something is a godlike activity. That's hard stuff.
It is hard stuff. And the first day, I have a deck that I've created. But part of the stats in the deck, entrepreneurs are 3 times more likely to have a heart attack than the rest of the population. They're I don't know how many times more likely to go bankrupt or get divorced. What kind of a kook would want to be an entrepreneur?
Who said that to me most recently is my son David, who's up in. He's now moved to London to work, to continue building his startup, and he said, I'm crazy doing what I'm doing. He said, I can get a job, for 150, 200K and have like 8 weeks vacation. Okay. And ping pong tables in the office. All right. He says, why am I doing this? And it's really, he says, because this is my way to change the world. That's what he's all about.
That's right.
But he's sitting there. He realizes what you just said, which is, I am stupid to do this, compared to the alternative.
For all the odds and all the road signs that says warning, you can't not do it.
Yeah.
No, it's not good English, but that's really it.
And that's exactly where he is. I'm stuck. I know I'm supposed to do this, right? So off you go.
Yep.
So that's cover those statistics up front.
I mean, the first day, I try to say, are you sure you still want to take this class? It's kind of like the takeaway in the sales pitch, But
we'll get back to my question here. So how do you take something that's these books that we read that, talk about how to build something to be this huge company, right? And you're teaching this methodology and have all these people that are coming in that are very successful. And now I want to start this bakery. So how do I make that application? What do I sort of take and what do I leave behind? You see?
Well, that's why we talk about it every class. Okay. And there's not an answer that fits. Some weeks it's like it all fits. And some weeks it's like almost none of it fits. Like, I don't really need to get product market fit for a hair salon. What I'm doing is I'm trying to look at the other competing hair salons in the area. And that's what am I going to do that's different? And how am I going to put it in a location that makes the most sense for what I'm doing? It's different.
It's funny you should say that. I remember when I started as an angel investor, the place that I went was professional services. And I said, I want to invest in companies that are startups in areas where it is proven that people are already buying what they sell or what they intend to sell. There isn't this product market fit that just throw it out. It's sort of like you said, I'm going to start a dry cleaners. People needed their clothes cleaned. Okay. Yeah. I know it's there. The question is, and then I always say there's always room for one more services company. The question is can you get it to 3 million in 3 years? That means that you're somebody that you've really made a difference, as opposed to you're the next $250,000 a year service company,
and that's a good example. That's, you're not going to have a unicorn company come out of that, probably. On the other hand, you're increasing the likelihood that you probably won't go bankrupt in 12 months.
Yeah, by a big factor. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of a grand slam home run, which is what the VCs in Silicon Valley are trying to do every time they're at bat, they have to hit a grand slam home run. It's not a home run and it's not a triple.
Yeah.
You're happy with singles and doubles.
And I don't care if I bunt. I don't care if I even bunt on. Okay, so that I don't have to have the glory. I just got to be fast. Okay.
Right. No, that's right.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think on the East Coast, and I like deals personally when I'm investing in companies. I like deals that have a chance to get to a profitable state without material venture funding. Doesn't mean that they will.
Yeah, but doesn't that put a ceiling maybe on how big it can actually get?
Yeah. But I'm just telling you what I like. I'm not telling you I'm right.
No, but what you're doing is you're doing what I did, which is to say I'd rather be a bigger piece of a small pie than a very small piece of a very big pie.
Yeah,
as an investor, okay.
I've had success selling companies that are small enough where the acquiring market is bigger. Okay, the bigger you make it, I mean, if you get a company that's worth $5 billion, there's a more finite number of companies that can buy those. Okay. not that I wouldn't rather have a $5 billion company. I'm not saying that, but there's dilution and loss of control along the way that you trade off for that.
Yeah.
And so I like, if I can get them to a point where we can sell them for $50 million, and, I still own a decent chunk of it. I mean, I never apologize for cashing a check.
I know you've always said that. You've always said that. Well,
I hope the acquirer is going to make a lot more money. I mean, I just like them early. That's where I feel more comfortable. I like them coming out of the ground, and at some point when they get to a certain size, I'm probably not the guy you want on the board anymore. It's time
you're
to
the same as I sit there and I say, once I get past sort of that $10 million range in revenue, I don't know that I'm adding a lot of value at that point.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right. My value is early.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I was also the guy that said, look, I don't mind exiting, okay, for even a Series A value.
Yeah.
So if you own 40% of a $5 million exit, that's pretty good. Okay. And then you kind of go to the next one. I'm not looking for, like a lot of these angel investors that are on the West Coast, they were very fortunate to have $50,000 investment in a company that became a $200 billion company.
Yep.
And they're like, wow, and look at how many millions and millions and millions of dollars I made because of that. And you say, well, that's great, but what are the odds of that, of an angel getting involved in those deals in the Southeast or even in Silicon Valley at this time,
That's right.
It's hard to find those things. They are why they're called unicorns. They're very, very unique. So how did how did all this entrepreneurship, you weren't an entrepreneur when you kind of came out of Clemson. I mean,
No.
Talk a little bit
about.
I graduated
from Clemson with a mechanical engineering degree in 1984, and I went to work in a manufacturing plant.
Okay.
Which is kind of what you did,
Everybody else was doing it. You did it. Okay.
No, I did it. I worked in a plant. I was a project engineer. I had departments that I was responsible to keep running.
Yeah.
I had to go make things in a machine shop and put them on my machines and keep them running. And it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I enjoyed it. Decided to go back to grad school, and I thought sales and marketing.
Why did you decide to go? You did it? You learned a lot. Why did you decide there's something else?
I didn't want to be in a plant.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to, and I thought my personality and demeanor was better going to be in sales and marketing, and I thought I needed an MBA or an MBA equivalent.
Why did you think that?
I just did. I don't know. I always thought I would get it. Well, not
Was
always.
It possible that the people in the plant, you kind of looked at what your future was and the people that you were reporting to and said, I'm not them?
Yeah.
You follow me?
That's right. Yeah, I think there was some of that.
And if I'm not them, then who am I, right? And where should I go?
Yeah, when I was young, my father got transferred to Europe a few times. We lived in Bucharest. I lived in Bucharest, Romania for 2.5 years. I lived in Warsaw, Poland for a year, but when there was still communism there. And so when I came to Clemson, I had been to more countries than I had states.
What did your dad do?
He worked for Corning. Corning
Incorporated.
I was Corning Glass then.
Was he a sales guy?
No, he worked in a plant. That was another reason I knew I didn't want to be in a plant, because they call him in the middle of the night and he'd always have to go. So I don't know. I just I went to South Carolina for their international business program and learned to speak German. I thought part of my, I wasn't smart enough to get into Harvard or one of the top Stanford MBA programs.
Yeah.
So I decided my competitive advantage was I'm going to learn a foreign language. And so that's when I went to South Carolina, learned to speak German, which was very useful now. But
what was it like? How do you learn to speak German?
It's very difficult.
You didn't know it at all.
I mean, I had a little bit in high school. We basically went through my entire high school learning in 2 days. Yeah, we went my first semester, my first summer, we went through 3 college textbooks of German in, I think, like 10 weeks. It was, it
How
was
old
the
were you at
most,
the time?
let's see, I was 20, 23.
$23.
I worked for 2 years before I went back to grad school full time. I started my MBA at night at Furman, but decided to go do this.
So why the language thing? What was that about?
I thought that
I have not
the
met one other person that has done this, by the way. I heard people that want to go and become MBAs or whatever it is, okay? But I
no,
never heard
I mean,
somebody said,
because
"Oh, I have to pick up this language and get my
well,
master's."
I kind of grew up in an international environment, so I was
Right.
comfortable in different cultures and different. I just didn't know how to speak a language. It was kind of a personal thing with me. That's something I always wanted to do.
Oh, okay.
And I believed that if I'm not going to have a Harvard MBA, I need some differentiator. And that for me, that was going to be I'm going to be able to operate. I wanted to move around the world, work around the world, and did that. You know, Carol and I, my wife and I, moved to Germany for 2 years from 1990 to 92. We came back to the States for about 18 months and moved back to Germany for another year.
I want you to tell me something. So that makes sense. So you always saw yourself kind of working that way, right? So
Yeah.
therefore, I did need the language. Well, you told me a story. I just want you to share on that
Oh,
story
no.
about that. What was it? The first week you were in this intensive German. So there was this German language school within
Well, it's
the
part of
university.
South Carolina. It's just,
Right.
yeah, I was in
And then you
Columbia.
went into the master's after that, right?
Well, the business classes started after. It was all part of the same program,
Oh, it was. Okay.
but you know, the first summer was just language.
Okay.
And yeah, I moved. I took all the money I had saved for 2 years, put deposits down, and moved myself to Columbia. Met all these brilliant people that came in from all over the world to this program, and started my German classes. So I go to class the first day. We study the first chapter of the book. The next morning at 8 a.m., we take an hour exam on what we learned the day before. Okay. So that's drinking from a fire hose. You're literally in language classes from 8 till 4 p.m. And then you have to prepare for the exam on what you learned that day for an hour, you know, the next morning. So that's Monday. So the Monday's the first day. Tuesday, I take the first test and we turn the page, and now we're in chapter 2. So now Wednesday, I come back and I take my second test. And at the end of the day, Herr Elba, who was my German instructor, called 2 of us up to the room, and he basically said to us, look, you two, you need to go back to the bursar's office right now and see if you can get some of your money back, because you're never going to make it through here. I made a 70 on the very first test, which was basic stuff. The other kid made a 60. So I'm like, whoa, this is serious. I put everything on red 7, and I'm about to strike out and go bankrupt in the first round. So, but I thought to myself, Charlie, I said, you know, that guy made a 60. As long as he's here, I'm here. So I hired a teaching assistant, a German teaching assistant, to tutor me at night every night. And I just got through it, and somehow I made a B plus that first term of the summer.
What did Herr Elba say when you kind of
I mean,
kept
he
showing
thought I
up?
was stupid. He thought I was stupid because I literally had like $10,000, probably 8,000 of which I could get back. I don't remember exactly,
Okay.
but the bottom line is he thought I was crazy. But I stayed 2 weeks after that decision. The guy that made the 60 was kicked out of the program, so now I'm low man on the totem pole. But I work.
How did you know? This says a little bit about you, okay? Is that you said, one, you told Herr Elba, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to quit, right? You know, so then you get into, but you didn't do what the other guy did, which is I'm just going to study harder or whatever he decided to do. You said, I need help.
Yeah, I'm gonna if they're gonna throw me out of here, I'm gonna leave it all on the field. I'm not gonna leave a stone unturned that I could have turned. And for me, that was hiring, I think for $10 an hour, even back then, a German
Did you always do that though?
student.
Did you always ask for help and pay for help? Wherever
No, I'd never done it before.
but you
I
knew
just
you needed to do it. You
I knew
needed
I
more
needed
than you
something.
needed, in
I
other
needed
words,
to
you needed more than your brains and grit in order to
correct.
make this happen.
German is not an easy language to learn. I could have done Spanish and it probably been a little easier. I thought because I was a mechanical engineer and I liked beer that German made sense for me. That was the logic, seriously. So it didn't make it, when I think about it now, I mean, Spanish would have been so much more useful, but
So then you get
anyway.
out of it. So you learn the German, you become fluent in German.
Uh, uh, yeah, I mean, literally, I managed a group of German people. I managed a department where some of the people I had to give reviews to did not speak English. So I had to give their review in German. Yeah, I learned German. I when I lived over there and I was in a taxi and I start talking to the taxi driver, he knew I wasn't German, but he didn't think I was American either. He might think I was like from Denmark or
Gotcha.
Belgium or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
What's interesting, I always measure fluency by saying, can you really express yourself without limits? That's what
Oh,
I
oh,
call fluency. Okay. As opposed to
yeah.
how do I go to the bathroom or give me a beer, there's conversational and then there's fluent. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a thought and I can express it and not
Yeah.
sound like a kindergartner, trying to get it,
Yeah, I'm never going to say that. I think fluency is a very high bar. High bar.
yeah,
I was very functional
I got
in
it.
my German, and I could get my ideas across, but they might be words that I use that somebody that would be more fluent might pick different words
Yeah,
or
I got
different
you.
sequence.
I got it. Okay. So then how do you go were you working, did you move then with this degree? Did you actually get into sales and marketing?
Yeah, I came back to the States, took a job with a $200 million international company. Half of the revenue was generated outside the U.S. I took a job. I was kind of a strategic hire for them because I had the technical background they wanted. I had the overseas experience they wanted, and I had a language. And so they were planning to expand their international presence, and they were looking for young executives to be able to help them do that. So they made a job for me essentially, that I did for about a year and a half, and then we acquired a smaller competitor in Germany, and I was asked to go over to help integrate that company into the big company.
Hmm.
So I got to write the first strategic and operating plans for a business that never had one because
Oh.
it was run by the founder, and it was
So was it
interesting.
this founder that actually got you excited about potentially being an
No, no,
entrepreneur?
no. I didn't even know him by the time he was gone. He sold his
I see.
company and he was gone. But
So where did
the
all this
first time I got
where did all this
interested in
entrepreneur stuff come from? It seems like
the
you're
first
settled into a
time
pretty good career.
I
And right
had,
now you're married. You probably have kids
yeah,
at this time, right?
yep,
Yeah, so it's for real. Like now you got overhead at home, you're
yeah.
making some money, it's going up, you're starting to build a better lifestyle.
Well, I mean, back when I was probably in high school and early college, I was dating a girl whose father owned his own manufacturing company. So that was the first time I was ever exposed to somebody who had their own company, really. And it was interesting. Tough way to make a living, but It was interesting.
Did you see it as a tough way to make the living then, just as an observer, as a young man who's dating his?
Yeah, this was a union shop, low margins in upstate New York. It was a metal bending business. I mean, it's very interesting. But the idea that you could have something that you could mold and create and expand was interesting to me. When I was coming out of graduate school, and even I was very, after my first tour to Germany with Carol and I, and our son was born then, came back. I was bored. When you take an international assignment and you're 6 time zones away, you're very and this before the internet, you're very autonomous. We would communicate by fax machines to the States. There was no email. So you're on your own. And when you come back into corporate, people think you're just going to like fit back into the big machine, and you're like a fish out of water, because you're used to making decisions more unilaterally, and now you can't again.
Yeah.
And so I struggled with that. And so I started a few businesses, like home businesses and things on the side, just to keep my brain from. Then eventually one day, went back to Germany again, was running a department over there for the company. So I was young executive, got to order my company BMW, and it was just, kind of a posh deal.
But that's what they do. I mean, that's part of the golden handcuffs. I mean, that's what it is. Yeah. It's like, I've got it going now, and I've got brand in the company. You became your father in effect. I mean, you're known, you're respected, you're paid well. Yeah.
Then I came back to the States a little earlier than expected, because I had family situations. It wasn't working over there, so I had to come home. And it was difficult. And so, but eventually, one day, I was trying to get a job with a software company. It was like I was on a float on a mill pond, right? Very safe, very secure, but not very exciting. And right next door, there's this whitewater rapids called software. And I'm like, I really want to.
What year was this?
1998.
98. Okay. Yeah. And that's the .com whole thing going on too. So you're being inundated with that media presence of .com. Okay.
Yep. So one day I was very unhappy in my job, and I had developed a contact with a guy who was asked to come in and take over the presidency of a software company for a founder. And I had known him before, and I was trying to get him to hire me, and he wouldn't hire me. And I didn't understand why. And finally, one day,
after all, you speak German.
Well, I mean, I was willing to do whatever. I just put me in. I can do this. He wouldn't hire me because I had no idea how risky the deal that might not even hold together 6 months. And I had full benefits and blah, blah, blah. And finally, one day, I went in to my boss and I resigned. I said,
with nothing on the other end.
Didn't have a job, but I knew I didn't want to do that.
Let me ask you this. How much money did you have saved?
Somewhere around $50,000, maybe.
How long would the $50,000 have taken you back then, with wife and a kid?
If I really turned it down, probably a year.
Okay. So you could push it for a year. So you got a year, possibly, of runway.
I didn't think about it that way. I knew I was going to go find another job.
That's my friend Greg. How did you think about it?
I guess I probably did process that, but I'm like, I'm going to find a job. So I got in my car after resigning, and I'm driving home, which is like less than 10 minutes. And I called the president of the company who wouldn't hire me. I said, look, just so you know, I don't know if you're going to hire me or not, but I quit. He says, you quit? I said, yeah. He says, why'd you quit? I said, because I don't want to do it anymore. I want to work for you. He says, well, if you're stupid enough to quit, I'll hire you. I just didn't want to take you out of all that safety net you had there. But if you've already quit, come on. So I went to work for my first software company in March of '98.
What kind of software
Selling,
company was it?
it was a company called Intertech. It was a document management software company that was
Okay.
integrated into Ring Zero of Windows, meaning the big
Wait a
deal
minute.
then.
I knew Intertech.
Ellie Gruber was the chairman.
Yeah. Wasn't that backed by Nora Mosley?
Yes.
Yeah,
He,
yeah, yeah. No, I remember. I spent time with Ellie. Yeah, for quite a while.
yeah. And then they brought Steve Heineman in, and I went to work for Steve.
Oh, okay.
And so I was there 2.5 years. I learned uh, what a cram down was through that experience.
What did you learn though, as far as from a skills standpoint? Here you come in as a fairly
I learned
experienced
that.
executive, okay, with
Yeah, I
resources
learned that.
around you. Now you walk into Ellie Gruber, who's not an executive, who was just
Yeah, Ellie was
heads
not.
down, churn it out. He was a vision caster. He was that kind of
Yeah,
guy.
Ellie was not really running the company at that point. He was the
Okay.
chairman. Steve had come in to run the company. And so what I learned, there's a couple things I really learned a lot. There's a couple really key things. One was I learned how to sell without a brand.
Oh boy.
Okay. I learned how to sell something that nobody knew about as long as I could figure out how what I had could fix what you need.
Okay.
Or match with what you need. So that was a critical skill. I learned how to sell something that you couldn't touch, right? Software you can't touch, right? I used to sell equipment. You could see it. It's right here. It's in the line. I learned
And it
that
was
you
stuff, and what you used to sell had product market fit for eons.
correct.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
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 You were
We
like,
were just
my
doing
machine
this.
is better than his machine. Right. I mean, that's the kind
That's
of
right.
thing. Now you're
That's right.
sitting here with this Intertech, and it's like,
Yep.
what's document management? What is this?
Yep. And why does it matter?
Yeah.
And then the other thing I really learned is, um, it really is captured well in Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore, which is still a classic book. And that is, at some point you gotta put all your eggs in one basket. If you spread yourself too thin, you try to do multiple verticals at once, you're just going to go through the cash quicker, and you're never going to get over the chasm. So at some point, once you figure out what that thing is, you got to put your entire army on that beach and live or die by it. And so we had tried to launch multiple verticals at the same time and ran out of money again. And so that's when I was offered the opportunity to do something else. So I got laid off.
After what, 2.5 years, you say?
2.5 years. I had put all the money I had into common stock.
How
And
much, by
so,
the way, did they pay you what you were being paid at the corporation?
No, but with bonuses after when I got going, I made probably a little more money than I was making.
Oh, okay.
But,
So there wasn't much of a sacrifice there.
I mean, I sold the biggest deal the company had ever done. But then they decided to focus on one vertical, and that wasn't the vertical I was working on. And that learning from that process, though, was how my co-founding partner Mike Shutt got laid off the same day I did, and he was kind of the application engineer developer on my projects. And ultimately, we decided to launch a company together, and we incorporated in November of
Wait a second.
2000.
How do you get to that? So Mike's the technical guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
he knows how to program. And then you got
Yep.
you know how to sell, and you
Yep.
know how to manage. Okay. You understand how companies run.
Well, yeah, but yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, you had to have
Well,
some
I
of that experience from.
honestly, Charlie, this is part of this faith thing. Is I didn't know if I was supposed to do this. I had 3 kids by now. Carol was home with my kids. She wasn't working. The last thing I really needed to do was start a company, right? I had kind of gone through that phase of my life. Like, okay, that's not going to happen for you. And I believe that's where God said, okay, I got you right where I want you now. And so I was
How
in
old
heavy
were you
prayer.
at this time when you got laid off? How old were you?
How old?
Yeah.
Is that what you?
Yeah. How old were
uh,
you? Yeah.
35 or 36.
Yeah. You've had a lot of experience now walking into a new startup. You don't have
Yeah.
startup experience, but boy, you got a whole lot of other experience.
Well, I learned a lot of things. Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want, and that's what I got at Intertech. Right, I got a lot of experience, and it was tremendous. And that experience helped me. So when you don't get what you want and you come up empty, there's a moment of truth, and you have to decide: did I learn a lot from this that I can apply to go
Mhm.
forward, or do I need to take my toys and go home? Right. And I was open to either answer. But I was in very intensive Bible study at that same time and was focused on what am I supposed to do? What do you want me to do? If you want me to start this company, you need to give me a sign.
Where did all
And
this
that
where did all this faith stuff come in?
I had put off an intensive Bible study 5 years in a row, every year for 5 years in a row, because I was too busy.
Did you grow up?
Half
Did you grow up in?
I grew up attending church. Yeah,
So
I
why
was,
wasn't that enough? What was the big deal?
well, I would not say that I didn't live my life that way. I just went to church. Okay. Like right before
Because
exams.
it's the culturally correct thing to do, right? I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
yeah,
And we moved a lot, but when there was a Methodist church in our town,
yeah.
we would join the Methodist church, and that's what I did. And we were a part. My wife and I had our kids. We were at Alpharetta First United Methodist Church here, but I had never studied the Bible.
Yeah, but what moves you from this is enough? You follow me? I'm doing it. I join the church. I go on Sundays. I bring my kids and my wife, and we all show up.
I was in
To
a
this, I
Sunday
needed
school.
more. I wanted to know more.
I
That's
was in a
another
Sunday
whole
school
step.
class. I was in a Sunday school class where there were some guys leading that I really admired their knowledge and understanding and faith, and I wanted to like peel back the onion on that.
Was there something in you that was sort of missing? Do you think that you felt
I
like
think there's
you
something
were
in
trying to
all of us.
fill?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, there's something in all of us when we're kind of living for ourselves and not for something bigger than ourselves. I think there's a natural void there, whether we want to admit it or not. And it was just like,
But you felt that. See, when I asked you, did
oh,
you, what was it in you? You said you changed it from me to this to us. Okay. The answer that you gave me. I'm asking you an
yeah.
answer that's very
Well, I mean,
personal.
I think we all start and enter into this in different paths. Potentially, that path for me is I had some people that were older than me in a Sunday school class that I'm like, wow, I like the way they operate. I like what they're learning, what they're doing, how they're living. I want some more of that.
Okay.
And so that caused me to finally, after 5 years of putting it off, say,
How
I'm
old
going
were
to
your
do.
kids at that time?
Good question. Probably, uh, probably like 5, 7, and 11
Yeah.
ish.
I think part of it is that, you
10.
now have responsibility for more than just Greg Smith and, Carol
Yeah.
can take care of herself. Now all of a sudden you've got like, I'm a dad and I've got all that,
Right.
what's the story, man? And you
Right.
do see somebody that seems to have that. And maybe you want what
And
they,
so I went through this 9 month intensive thing where you read like 80% of the Bible and you meet with a group for 2.5 hours every week. And
did you do it in
uh,
German or was it?
now,
It
and so
sounds like the same course.
I really came out of it a whole different person.
Really?
And yeah,
What was the
yeah.
frequency of it again?
Well, it was about a half hour of Bible reading a day
Yeah.
and 2.5 hours on Sunday afternoon.
Wow.
Group.
Big
It was,
commitment.
yeah. My Bible would go on the plane with me so I could get my reading in. But anyway, coming back to like, what do you want me to do? I got a call from a gentleman by the name of Herb Palmeltree. He was at Liberty Mortgage over in Norcross, and I had been talking to him about starting this company to automate the the mortgage process.
Was this
And
something you were doing at Intertech?
I was trying to do it, didn't get off the ground because we ran out of money.
So you had
So
given thought to this, and
I
you
had
were
given
selling
thought to
it.
it. I had gone to mortgage banking school for a week in Baltimore to learn how the U.S. mortgage process works.
Okay.
And I came back and wrote a business plan, which is largely what we ended up executing at Advectis. Anyway, Herb said, Greg, are you going to do this or not? Because if you're not going to do it, we're going to do it. And that was the lightning moment I had been looking for. So in that moment, I said, yeah, that was the burn the boats moment. We're going to do it because that's all I needed. So,
so how do you start something like that? You didn't, I'm sure when they laid you off, they didn't give you a 2-year sentence.
No.
Okay.
I had a board member and investor in Intertech that wanted to invest in our startup.
Oh,
the two
okay.
of us that went off. But he wanted to buy half of the company for $500,000 before we started it. And I wasn't interested in that. So I went and found some friends and family. I raised $100,000, and I always knew, like, all right, if this thing doesn't work, can I sell the software and give investors their money back? And we ended up raising, I think, 1.1 million total in Advectis.
Why was that on that 100,000 that you raised? Why was it even a concern that you had that you needed to give that money back since it was an equity raise? Why was that something that consumed you or concerned you, I should say?
I cared about first of all, investors were people in my family and close personal friends. Like my dad, my former boss. I didn't look at it at the time as this is like, I just like, I may not be able to get the full 100 back, but can I get 50 of it back? I thought about that.
Okay, yeah, I can see. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that I run into or have run into over the last 30 years doing this stuff. They're like, no, I'm raising money for you. It's an opportunity for you. If I lose all your money, that's the game, right? You didn't think that way.
I just didn't think like that. I didn't think like that. And I was really tight with $1. We only raised $1.1 million. And when
how did you raise that next round? Since you got 100,000 to start with, so that gave you a little bit, you and Mike, a little bit of time to kind of build something, right?
Well, then we paid Mike, and I went to work as a consultant to another startup company that was VC funded that needed help. So they didn't even need me yet. So I went and made my own money, paid Mike out of that 100 to have him build our initial prototype. And then when that was ready, then I came in and went and sold it. And there's a lot of stories.
When that was ready, what happened? You came in and you said you came after the product was ready or the first version of it.
Yeah, then I came in to try to sell it. Yeah.
Did you quit then the consulting gig?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody do the funding like that. I think that's a great way to kind of get the funding for the product out of the ground, right?
Yeah. There wasn't anything for me to sell until we had something. So we were just very conservative with our cash. And
I love that.
And so that's how we did it. And then
so how did you raise the next million then?
Well, it was.
And when did you raise it? Did you raise it right after the product you started selling, or?
That 100,000 took us about close to a year, and then we started hiring some people because it was working, and then the original investors were willing to put more money in. There were new investors that came in. Mike Parham, do you know Mike?
Yeah.
Mike became a kind of a strategic advisor and came on our board and put his own money in. And, when it started to work, when you have something that's working that people are willing to put money in, but we kept it pretty tight.
When you say when you have something that's working, people are willing to put money in, how would you define when you have something that's working?
When you have product market fit.
Okay, what does that mean?
Meaning,
Like, yeah.
what that means to me is when you have product market fit, your product that you are offering to your target market is identifying that what you have will solve a problem that they have and they're willing to pay for it.
Ah,
And
okay.
and the barriers, where you're pushing, what feels like a boulder up a mountain with your nose, it starts to go over the top when you get product market fit and it gets easier. And you're not, oh, the other thing that happens is your churn is goes way down. Okay. Like you might have sold a product to a company that actually turns out not to be a good fit for what you're doing, or you make a change in your direction. So the early customers are not really a good fit anymore. But once you get the product market fit and the market that you're going after, and it starts to work, when the dog, I say when the dogs start eating the dog food, it
Yeah, and they come back for it, and they come back for
they
it at
come back
every
for
meal,
more.
right? Yeah, I
And
mean
they come
that's the
back
thing
for
that's
more.
important. Yeah, that's
Now,
really
if they're
important.
just signing up and using it and then cutting it off but ours was like, it was pay for what you eat. So if it never doesn't work for you, we were out. They paid by per loan.
Oh, I
and
see.
it, and we sold against people that charge licenses, because when you take a license, when that company, you pay them $1 million for the license, so the balance of your relationship has just shifted. They have the power, you
Yeah.
don't.
So you started a SaaS company before
I
SaaS
did before.
companies were in vogue.
Correct. That's exactly
Why
what we
did you
did.
do that? Why did you go to a pay by the drink as opposed to a licensing deal?
Um, I don't know. It seemed like I was competing against Federal Express and this paper world, and I wanted to make it easy for someone to come on board. Like if I was going to charge a license agreement, I have to get over what that's going to cost, and I have to be able to live with that long term with a maintenance stream.
Right.
So it's just simpler. Just pay me what you're paying FedEx and use this.
What do you mean FedEx? Did you really mean FedEx?
Yeah, I did, because we were competing. Basically, what our company did is we enabled a mortgage broker or originator to capture all the loan documents that's needed to go in to make an underwriting decision. And
Yeah.
instead of FedExing them into the underwriter, to actually fax them with barcoded cover sheets to a server that turned each of those docs into an individual PDF and stacked it in the right order in an online folder, so that you could underwrite from a screen instead of from paper on your desk. That's what we did.
That's much
Seems
more
silly
efficient.
now.
No, but it's much more efficient than what it was doing, like putting it all
Yeah.
in envelopes for FedEx, and then I get bits and pieces in 3 envelopes. I got to put it together and all
When you
that.
lose stuff, you lose things.
Yeah,
And with this, you don't lose anything. It's
that's
on our
pretty cool.
servers. Yeah, it turned out to be good.
Turn out. But the problem with is when you're charging by the drink, okay,
Yeah,
is it takes a long time to get to cash flow positive in a lot of cases.
absolutely. But
Okay.
once you get there, is the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, but there
And
is the ugly part. So how did you get there?
we were just extremely efficient. Like, I remember fretting over spending, I did everything from sell the deals to install the deals to raise the money, and to buy office supplies. Okay, in the beginning. Right? So, do I really need this box of paper clips right now? I remember thinking about that. That's how silly it is. Yeah,
Well, that was really
I,
good though.
I managed the money like it was my own, because I felt like I was responsible for it. And I knew, and you know this, Charlie, you must be present to win.
Yeah.
And so, if I run out of money and I don't have anything to show for it, that might be the end. So,
Why
We were
did
just,
we, and let me, this is off the subject for just a moment, and then we're going to come back to the rest of this story because I think it's really help entrepreneurs, is you and I got involved in a deal together. And there was carelessness with the way that spending was being done. Okay.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, I would say
Why, given who you are and what you're about and the way that you manage your business, why did you let that happen?
Well, as you recall, I and you voiced concerns on multiple occasions on that. But at the end of the day, the role has changed. I am no longer the CEO. I'm an investor.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the CEO. I need the CEO to take responsibility for his or her decisions. So I will weigh in heavily with my opinion, but I don't make that decision anymore.
Yeah, but it's
And
almost like what we did because you and I are both very cash flow minded sort of operators, if you will. All right.
right,
We look to get to, like you said, is man, it's a wonderful and beautiful thing, when you start making money, in a SaaS
oh,
model, because it's just there it is, every month. You don't have to sort of resell everything again in order to make profit, which you do in a licensed business. Okay. But
yeah.
given that that's who we are and those were our principles, how come it took us so long to just call an end to it as opposed to not allow it to happen at the beginning?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I have the right answer for that, but I think we also wanted to believe that we were almost there. And I remember the day when you and I discovered that we screwed up and we let it go too far.
Yeah.
But, but it's okay.
No, but so let's go back
Yeah.
to your business. I just wanted to bring that up because it just struck me, when I started even in doing my investing business, it was very cash flow based. Okay. I was very
Hmm.
careful with the way
Hmm.
uh, I wanted the operators that I was investing in to be thinking in terms of the way you thought when you started your business. And the
What
way
Charlie?
I would accomplish that, though, was different. Is I'd say, okay, I'm going to put $400,000 into this business. And here's how I'm going to do it is every month, at the end of the month, you tell me how much money you need, and I'll write a check. Well, what happens is they always got to cash flow positive sooner than it predicted because
Okay, yeah, that's a
they were
good
sick
thing.
and tired of coming back to me asking for money. So
Yeah,
I'd write checks for 5,000, 8,000,
yeah,
$12,276, whatever it was. And so that's how I would get to as opposed to saying, here's 400,000.
yeah. No, that makes sense. It
But I
makes sense.
changed at some point and went from my old model to this model. And that's when things started to lose control, in effect. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I also think the history of that CEO was in software, and he came into a service business, and he wanted it to be a software business even before it
Yeah.
was. And I mean, I think there's a lot of things. I mean, but it's good. I mean, he's figured it out and he's doing good, and it's all.
It
And
is.
you and I both learned a lot from that experience.
We did.
We, you know, we got not what we wanted, but some
But
experience.
what you do is and from that experience and from others that I've been involved in, I've done the same thing a couple of times, is you learn what you already knew.
Yeah, that happens. Hopefully, it doesn't happen too much.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think that's where I start kicking my own butt, in situations like that. But anyway, so go back to your business. So then it starts to work, and you
Yeah.
raise the $1 million from
Well, we raised it,
internal investors as
two
well
and
as
three hundred thousand at a time.
yeah.
I think the biggest round we ever did was maybe 500,000. I don't even
How
remember.
did you wind up determining what the valuation for the business was as you did each round?
I mean, I got help from Mike Parham because he had
Okay.
experience. Mike was the guy. I was the first time CEO.
Yeah.
And so and there were times I didn't know what I didn't know. And Mike was the guy that I turned to say, Mike, and if Mike were here, he's heard this 100 times. Mike was my insurance policy to make sure I didn't put it in the ditch and not know it was going there. Right. And Mike was incredibly helpful.
But here's something
And
again, this goes back to who you are, which is really incredibly important, I think, to bring up. Is just like when you were studying, when Herr Elber told you, go get your money back, your answer was, hey, this is really important to me. I need to get help. And
Yeah.
here you are now starting your own company, first time CEO, first time startup of your own company, and you wound up with Mike Parham. I'm sure
Yeah.
it wasn't an accident that you were looking for a Mike Parham like guy to kind of help you.
Yeah, the funny story is I told Mike about my idea to start this company before I left Intertech.
Oh,
And
okay.
and what Mike told me was, and I was introduced to Mike, and he was kind of an icon in the tech
Yeah,
community.
yeah.
And I said, I got this idea. And you know what he said to me? And
Don't do it. Right?
He'll laugh today if he ever sees this video. Greg, listen to me. The world doesn't need another document management company. So the next time I talked to him was literally a year and a half later. We had started the company. I had sold a product to a company in Silicon Valley, a .com mortgage company,
Uh-huh.
and I had sold it on a per drink basis. And he called me up, and I'm getting revenue. I'm able to like pay myself, and he says, "Hey, Greg, everything's working great. Just one thing. And what's that?" He says, "We want to own it." What do you mean you want to own it? You told me that you wanted me to host it and do it all, and you would buy it by the drink. That's what we agreed to. That's what we set up. And he goes, he says, Greg, never show all your cards. So I'm like, uh-oh, I don't know what to do. So I call Mike Parham. I say, Mike, I don't know if you remember me. My name's Greg Smith. I'd like to buy you breakfast. I got a problem I need your advice on. So I meet him for breakfast. I said, Mike, you told me not to start this company. Well, I did it anyway. And here's what and he got really interested in it. And I said, I don't know how to handle this guy. What do you think I should do? Well, by the end of the conversation, it became clear Mike wanted to come on our board and put some money in. And ultimately, we ended up hiring him as part of Catalysta Partners. It was him and Steve McGraw, and I think there was another gentleman. And so he basically came in and performed an operating role for our company. He was the head of really business development and partnerships. And he helped negotiate this whole thing with this guy. And it worked. And we sold him a license, but it was this big. And
so how long did it take to get to an exit with
7 years.
7 years to an exit? Did you put the business up for sale, or were you approached?
I was approached by Xerox in March of 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, we've been hearing about you guys everywhere. We'd like to know more about what you're doing. This is an M&A guy for one of their Xerox Global Services business. I said, okay. Now, Xerox had made a run at the mortgage tech business while I was growing mine and had retreated. They came in this huge splash and then took their toys and went home. They didn't understand it. So I basically gave them a sales pitch, the same pitch I would give to a mortgage bank using WebEx at the time, WebEx. And he got intrigued and he asked me on the first call, hey, are you interested in selling your company? And I had just had my best month in the history of the company. I'm making money. I'm making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in the company. And I go, not really. But if the document company is asking, I certainly would be willing to talk to you about it.
Oh,
But no, I'm not looking to sell this thing. We're going here. I
yeah.
mean, so that started a dance, and every 2 weeks I had the same question or the same thing I would say to him or his successor. It ended up going to the corporate M&A person. I'd say, look, I've been very clear. If you're going to buy this company from me this year, you're going to have to pay what it would be worth next year.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, I'm not going to sell it to you. Because why would I? Um, I said, so you're going to pay between 5 and 7 times revenue. That was unheard of at the time. Now it's like you can, like, it's 3x that. But back then, that was pretty good. And I just want to make sure that we're still on the same planet because I don't want to waste my time or yours or my money, especially. And so every 2 weeks, hey, just having our call, 5 to 7x. We still good? Okay.
I mean, he's
Yeah.
calling you.
No, I call him.
Oh, you're calling him. Okay.
No, I mean, like we had, they sent a team down, did
Oh,
a deep
okay. But
dive. We did an
your call
offsite.
every month to the M&A guy was, look, I want to verify that we're talking this number, right?
Yeah, just want to
Yeah.
make sure. I don't want any surprises. You're going to try to drag me in and then lowball me for this business. It's not going to work. So anyway, made a generous offer for the company. And then one day I got a call from one of my fastest growing customers. It was $1 million of my 2008 plan. One customer, $1 million of SaaS revenue. And he said, Greg, do we owe you any money? Okay. He didn't say, Greg, hey, how are you? How's the family? I want to catch up with you. He said, do we owe you any money? And I said, Tim, what are you talking about? He says, oh, I got a bad feeling. I got a bad feeling. This is on a Sunday. It's after church. I go to my golf club. I'm on the putting green, just kind of chilling out. My phone rings. Do we owe you any money? That was probably around 1 o'clock on Sunday. The next Monday, the following day, I had a meeting with the guy who would be my boss, vice president, no, president of Xerox Global Services North America. We were supposed to talk about my comp plan. This is Monday at 5. Okay. Monday at 9 a.m., the company declares bankruptcy and shuts down. Okay. I had just gotten paid one check. They owed me $70K. Never got that. And I lost
Well,
$1
you're
million.
talking, it's $1 million deal, right? In
$1
revenue
million,
at a 5 to 7
2008.
multiple, right?
Correct. Correct. So I call the M&A guy and I say, hey, Dave, we've had a kind of a material event. Here's what's going on. This is gone. Let me know what you want to do. Okay. So I'm like, this deal's going to fall apart. Yeah, I don't think this is going to hang together. So he calls me back a couple hours later, goes, why don't you put together another forecast? Let me see what we got. Mm-hmm. So I put together a new forecast. I got all my team together. We looked at what we could do, and it would be a down forecast from what we had, but we thought we could make it up in a couple areas. So we sent it back, and the general manager did talk to me, but we didn't talk. That Monday he did talk to me, but we didn't talk about my comp plan. And I said to him, I said, look, you're Xerox. You need to be in this space. But you have to decide whether, quite frankly, you have the stones to come in now or not. It's going to be bumpy for a little while. You have to decide. We're going to be here. You have to decide whether you want to come in. But you do need to own this business at some point, but you need to decide if now's the time. So they huddled up and they came back and they made a revised offer. By the way,
that's an excellent sales pitch. I love that. Very strategic. I love that. Go ahead.
And they made a revised offer, which had an earnout component. I think the original offer was $34.5 million up front and a $10.5 million earnout. Total was 45. Then they revised it to 31 up front and some other, I don't remember what the earnout was. It turned out maybe be a $42,000. They
Wow.
moved a 42 million total. And I said, all right, if you can move $1 million from the back to the front, make it 32 up front, I can get this deal done. They said, I think we can do that. And we did. So
Wow.
we closed on September 10th, I think, of 2007. We signed the definitive documents that day and closed 30 days later.
What year was it?
2007, right into the teeth of the financial crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had spent so much time working on the deal that I didn't understand how bad things were getting
Isn't that something?
until,
It's that much of a distraction to kind of get the deal done. That's
I mean, it is when you're selling to a public company because,
yeah.
I mean, you sell to a private company, it can be a little similar, but a public company.
So then that's when it was around 2009 or 10, I think, that we first met. And it was through High Tech Ministries, High Tech Prayer Breakfast, all that.
Yeah, we met way before then. You had me at your table while I was growing this company.
Oh,
you had an open.
okay.
In fact, it was Mike Parham that connected me to you, and you had an opening at your table, and that was the first time I ever went to High Tech Prayer Breakfast. But that was probably back in like 2003 or something.
Okay.
First time we ever got.
I remember you sitting in my office while you were the general VP and general manager of.
Oh, I remember having this.
Yeah, what was that conversation? Yeah. Remember that? Because this gets you to how do we get you from where you are to this sort of angel investing stuff, right?
Well, so that's a time, if you recall, in 2009, people were getting laid off left and right.
Yeah.
A lot of wealth had been destroyed, and I've got this cushy job as VP of this division, making quite a bit of money, getting restricted stock, but literally I could make almost no decisions. My job at that time was to keep the mothership far enough away from my people so that they could actually do their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And we came out in 2008. Our revenue plummeted because our customers, some of them went out of business. They didn't leave us; they left the earth.
Yeah.
Okay. But 2009, we came out of and grew 40%. And we grew 40 to 45% every year until I left in 2011. But in 2009, I don't know. Ask me the question again. What did it?
Well, you and I had a conversation about.
We had a conversation because I had this cushy job, and I'm like, I don't feel good about it. What do you think I should do? Should I stay? I need some advice. And you said, you're already in the way. You need to leave because you're clogging up progress. And I don't know if it was 2009. It might have been 2010.
I think one of the comments that I made is that you were sitting there going, look at my job is to run interference. Okay, that's my job. And I could do this all day long, but, it's not very fulfilling and all that. And I said, do you know that so you're kind of hating your job, even though you've got all this money coming in, but there's somebody who either works for you now or works at Xerox that would kill for your job.
Yeah, I think that's right. You did say that.
And I remember when I said that, I remember you looking at me like, I never thought of that,
No, that conversation started my thinking process of maybe it's time for me to get ready to leave, but what am I going to do?
So what happened? How did that process go on? Because that's a hard process to go through.
Yeah, it took a while. I mean, I was bored.
Yeah.
I remember I designed my lake house working in that job because it was the creative outlet that I needed because I couldn't make hiring decisions. All the things that I used to do, I couldn't do anymore. It was like almost a figurehead job.
Yeah.
And I just like, I remember, and then they had us report, they they did a major acquisition of ACS. It was Applied Computer Services or something out of Dallas. This was a big services business that thought they knew software. And they had us report into them, and there were two software businesses in Xerox Global Services, and we both reported into them. And that just only lasted 6 months with me. The Xerox people I love, the ACS people were such a different culture, and so I remember
So you're
going
already sort of in motion, like I know I need to leave.
I think
And
I had made
this was the
maybe
catalytic event then? They kind of pushed it.
that was the one. Like, all right, my first boss had already said, when will you leave? I go, I'll tell you, I'll leave when I'm not having fun anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I'll leave. Well, we got to the point where I was not having fun anymore, and I didn't want to go in there anymore. And so I called my boss and resigned and told him who I thought he needed to hire, and he thought he was going to get fired for losing me, and it was a mess. But
now, did you quit this job with the Xerox the same way that you quit your job with the bigger company before you went to Intertech?
well, I didn't.
Follow me. In other words, did you have anything on the other end?
No. But what my plan is to take a year to decompress, to start doing some angel investing and see if I could do that.
Where did the idea of angel investing come up?
I had done, because I was an operator, first of all, when you make a little money, the deals start coming to you.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had some deals come to me. I had joined, ATA, I think, to learn a little bit about how to do it.
Technology Angels.
Yeah. And had started to develop some relationships with some folks in there, had done a couple of deals with them. And anyway, I just did it. And I said, I'm just going to give myself a year and then assess after a year. And after a year, it was going well. I hadn't made any money yet.
What did you do for the year?
I looked at a lot of deals.
Well, you said you're going to, how did you put it? You were going to assess what you're going to do or how you're going to be, how did you say that? I'm going to take a year.
I'm going to take a year. I felt like I needed a year to decompress because I had been in Advectis and Xerox for 10 and a half years.
So what did you do for this decompression period? That's, I guess, what I'm really
all
asking.
I did, I basically made angel investing a full-time job.
So where's the decompression and all that?
I didn't have any people reporting to me anymore.
That's it.
That's huge.
That is huge. That is huge. And you have nobody reporting to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Except me and my wife, really.
Yeah.
And so I had enough money to make it for at least a year. If it turned out I wasn't going to be good at this, I was going to go find something else to do. But
how did you know when you say you liked it? I mean, what did you like about it, and what did you learn in that year of those initial investments?
The role that Mike Parham played for me when I was a first-time CEO, that's the role I got to play for other startups.
And that's the role you wanted to play. You didn't want to be a passive investor, right? You wanted to be a little bit more.
I want to be. Well, I tried it both ways, and I found out the active works better for me. I lost a lot more money on the passives than I did the actives.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. I actually.
Was it difficult? One of the things I had difficulty with is moving from operator to investor. So I was investing, but I was still acting like an operator.
Yeah, no, I didn't have that problem.
No, really?
Mm-mm. I didn't want to be an operator anymore.
Yeah, but it's part of your DNA, It's like you see things
let's be clear. I wanted to impart knowledge and give advice and do strategic thinking, and then let you do it. You're the CEO. I'm not the CEO. I don't want to be the CEO. I only will be the CEO if I have to be the CEO, and that would
How
indicate that
often,
we have a big
but
problem.
how often did you, when you were in these deals that you were involved in early on, these earlier deals is what I meant,
Mhm.
is how often would you be in touch with these founders, if you will, that you funded? Was it a daily thing, a weekly thing, a monthly thing?
It's at least weekly, probably several times a week.
Yeah, well, that's to me, that's what I'll call myself an active chairman, if you will, even if there's
Yeah,
no
no,
board.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
But you're
Yeah.
still giving a lot of what appears to be strategic and operational advice,
Yes.
and so you're a tremendous influence in that business.
Oh, absolutely. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I don't
You're
have
not,
anybody that reports to me.
yeah, you're not the
And
guy that has to deliver the goods at the end of the day. Right.
well, I mean, I've got money at risk,
Yeah.
right? But not money that's enough money that's going to change my lifestyle or,
How
you
much
know.
money when you started doing these earlier deals? How much money did you? Well, two questions. First question, yeah. First question, Millie. Let's step back on that question for a second. What was your goal with this? What were you trying to achieve with this angel investing that you got drawn to and started doing?
Well, one, I truly believed it was important. Okay. I
Okay.
believe that early stage companies and our ability to grow them in this country is a competitive advantage.
Hmm. Okay.
And I did not serve in the armed forces. Okay. And I felt like this is something that I have some experience in. I'm not like, I don't have all the everything figured out, but I have some experience and I like it. I feel this is my world. I love this world. And my world, I was never be a Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, which is founder to, chairman of a multi-billion-dollar
Mm-hmm.
enterprise. I don't like them big. I know that about myself. I don't. I like them like 0 to 100 employees, and
So it
then
wasn't so, but I think it wasn't so much, and what I'm hearing you say, it wasn't so much about the money as it was about,
mm-mm.
I can really make a difference here in something that's important.
And I like it.
You like
I
it.
have, yeah, and I like it. I can make a difference. I don't want to lose money, but angel investors, if you're in angel investing solely to make a return, you are playing Russian roulette.
Hmm.
I mean, you have to be fed by more than just money to be in this game because when you lose $100,000 here and there, I mean, you have to have a higher calling than just the money. Otherwise, you'd invest in things that, you know, you wouldn't lose that kind of money on.
Well, how do you then? So when you approached this thing, how did you know? How did you, how much money did you like? Did you think in terms of by the deal on how much you would put in, or did you think in terms of I'm going to carve off this percentage of my net worth and I'm going to invest that in angel deals? How did
Yeah,
you?
I was willing to risk, call it up to $1 million in the beginning. Now I
Okay.
ended up expanding that, you know,
So you
everything
did.
that
So you had a
every,
finite amount that you said,
I
okay,
had a
that's it.
finite amount that just like in a business plan, you end up doubling. You double the amount of time, you
Right.
double the amount of money. That's probably what I did. Um, but I did have a line in the sand. I wasn't going to go beyond.
You did
Um, yeah, until I knew
until
I
you
had
went
some.
beyond it, and then you had a new line, right?
Then I had a new line, and then I've kind of stayed in that line.
You did.
Yeah, um, um, yeah, I had. Um,
Was it double what the first line was?
yeah,
It
always
was.
is.
Okay.
Hmm.
So what is the so how did you determine that you were going when you first got into it that you were going to apportion your investments? I mean, like you talk about VC firms and they say, "Well, I've got $100 million fund." Well, that means I need to make 10
Yeah,
investments at 5 million each, right? You follow me? And then I've got to have my
yeah.
follow on, and then I do my new fund. How did you kind of approach it?
No, I remember this. I did not have an investment philosophy when I started. I remember that with Angel Lounge, it was an Angel Lounge meeting that I figured out that I had to get some sort of philosophy to put a box around. I had a
When you say a
movable box
philosophy, you mean like an investment thesis of some type.
thesis.
Okay.
What am I going to invest in and what am I not going to invest in?
Yeah.
And where's the gray area that I might invest in? So for me, an absolute I'm not going to invest in it is healthcare technology because I know nothing about it and I don't want to learn about it. So I invest in venture funds to get exposure to that area of the market. But SaaS businesses was a sweet spot for me. And so if it's an interesting SaaS business, that's where I started.
How early would you get in?
I'd like to be early.
You mean you're
'Cause I
talking
like
about the
first
PowerPoint
money.
slide kind of level?
First money.
First money in. Okay.
I mean, let me look at that.
What kind of investment size
Yeah.
did you put in first money in?
Early, I probably put the biggest check in the first year or two was probably 100 grand. The smallest check was probably 25.
Okay.
So I was in that range.
So you
I
were
ended
one of
up,
the bigger investors at ATA at the time then.
yeah.
Yeah, because those people, they were like 10K people.
There were only a few of us that would be willing to write bigger checks,
Right.
and we found each other.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was serious about it. This is what I wanted to do next in my career. This is what I wanted to do, but I had to work, and it wasn't that I had to make like $100 million, but I had to not lose all my money, and I had to make a material impact on the next generation of startup entrepreneur and make some money in the process because I wasn't really charging for my time, right? Like I want a good deal up front, a fair valuation or a very attractive valuation, and I'll saddle up with you and help you.
How did you what was you think your measurement was for this? I wanted to have a material impact on this sort of next generation. How did you measure that?
I don't know that. I don't know how you measure it. I still don't know how you measure it. All I know is that.
Well, even if it's a subjective measurement, is there something that you kind of said, well, I did good here, I didn't do good?
If I have influence on a company to make decisions that move the company and the CEO leading the company forward, that's a good thing. And if I help them make decisions to avoid Armageddon, that's a good thing.
I see. Okay.
So, I mean, in any startup, there's, people that are depending on the decisions of the decision makers to continue to feed their families. Right. And so to the degree that
like
I
a
can
true
be
entrepreneur. Yeah, right.
I mean, if you've ever run a company and you don't think about how many mouths are fed from your trough, that's an important thing to think about. How many families are dependent on you to make good decisions and to lead well.
So you were the same. I used to say my goal when I got started is really to help really what I called experienced managers become entrepreneurs and achieve their dream of starting and owning their own company. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of my measurement. Can I get these guys started and then sort of building something, help them, influence them to sort of build something so that they can achieve that dream, and then I said that made a difference in people's lives. That was a good thing. Okay.
And that's step one. You got to have some money. And then the other thing that's important to me, if I'm going to invest my time is, if you're successful, what happens? Let's say you sell this and you make a lot of money. What do you want to do with that? What do you want to do? And I want to invest in people who are willing to invest in the next generation and in ministries and other organizations that help people with their own money.
That's interesting.
It's not an exclusive thing, but it's important to me.
Yeah,
I'm
I
willing
heard this once with a guy that was that I've invested in now, but who was in Silicon Valley at one point. And now he's come back. Okay, but he said, in Silicon Valley, I remember this was probably 20 years ago. I was out there visiting with him, and he goes, "You know how angel investing in Silicon Valley works?" I said, "No." He said, "They come in and they say, 'We're going to invest in your business. We think that you're a good operator, and we think you got a great concept, and you're going to be successful. But you know what? When you're successful, I want you to know, even before I put 10 cents in your business, when you become successful, I want you to come around and sit on this side of the table.'" And I was like, wow, what a great, clear message, for every one of them, so that they keep it going. And they have certainly kept it going. No doubt about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying the same thing. What was it that you looked for, or you've learned? What makes, when you see sort of an entrepreneur, and it could be, or a deal, okay, a concept, what do you say? You've kind of gotten, if you see a lot of them, you've gotten to where you say, I think this guy or this gal, they can do it, because you've made some decisions where you were wrong.
Yeah.
Have you gotten better at that? And what do you see in those people that makes?
I think I've gotten better at it. I'm also willing to. So I'm not in the phase anymore where this is an experiment, whether I can do this or not. I'm past that. It's not an experiment anymore. And so I am on occasion willing to take some more risks to invest in the people, because I think the people are worth investing in, even if the business is.
What makes them worth investing in? What do you see, or what is it that?
What I see is I see people, like, I'll give you an example. I'm on a number of boards at Clemson, and one of my fellow board members from one of them said, "Hey, I'm working with this guy in Greenville, and he's a young African American, 2 degrees from Clemson. He's got a startup going. He's funding it himself." He says, "I'm advising him. For some reason, his relationship with the organization was providing the mentoring. They could not invest." He says, "I don't know if his idea is going to work or not, but this guy's a winner and you should meet with him." So I'm like, okay, I respect this guy. I'll meet with this kid. So I meet with him at a Starbucks in Clemson, and he tells me about his thing. And this, when he talks about this first meeting to other people, he'll tell you this. Greg asked me the question. He says, "Let's say you're successful with all this." This is what I said to him. "You're successful. You made a bunch of money. What happens? What are you going to do?" And he gave me the answer I was looking for. And that is, he says, "Greg," he says, "I remember times when my parents had to make the decision, is it heat or light we're going to turn off?" So I want to help others. If I make some money, I want to invest in helping others get to improve their lives. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to back this guy. So I made a commitment. First time I ever met him, I committed 50 grand on the spot. Never done that before or since. And I'm still with him and still on the board. And we've had to pivot a couple of times, but we're in a really good space right now.
How much money did you wind up putting in so far?
200. A little over 200. Yep.
That's good.
And yeah. So
is it fair to say then the people that weren't investable from your standpoint were people who were just consumed about making the money without any view about serving others with the money?
I would say that as I'm now 59 years old, that's more important to me than it was 10 years ago.
What
10 years ago?
I want you to define it. It is more.
Well, investing in people that can be the next generation of
Okay.
investors, and is more important to me than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I wanted to make sure I could make money. And that was probably more of a priority than it is now. Now, I still like to make money. Don't get me wrong, but there's a huge component of the return that comes in non-monetary payback.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for all angel investing. I don't think people, can look at angel investing and say this is the best asset, strata of startups you should ever invest in to make more money. It's a lot easier to put money with VC funds and let them do it. And you can still make decent returns. But this is, to me, more fulfilling. And you have the ability to, it's like boot camp. You're going to war with somebody. And when you look back on your experiences, once, they've landed the plane and they've had a successful exit, or been able to had success to dividend a bunch of cash out to the investors and shareholders.
But I think that you went through a good process. I mean, the process is, okay, I'm changing occupation. I'm going from an operator, right? Entrepreneur operator to be an investor. The first thing that we want to do is we want to learn what this is about, and we want to be successful at it to see if we can be credible, right? That this is something I should do. Am I going to like it? Am I going to be successful?
Right.
Then as we move on through it, we become a little bit more higher purpose oriented.
Right.
Right. And I think that you've kind of run that path. But one of the things I said in the introduction, and we can end with this, is I wasn't sure if you're still, with the success that you've enjoyed with this cryptocurrency investing that you've done, okay, and with some of the success and involvement that you've been in some rather pretty big nonprofits. I know how you throw yourself into things. Are you still, I wasn't sure, are you still an angel investor? Is that something that you still continuing to do, or at 59 you're saying, I kind of did my bit?
No, I still have 14 companies I'm invested in. Let me look. I did I did 2 new deals last year.
Oh, you
which
did?
Is normal.
Okay.
Yeah. But
is it all through Clemson now?
No, but some of it is, but not all of it. No. The 2 deals I did here were based in Atlanta.
Oh, they were.
But I think, I'm very, I know that angel investments are a little bit like a roach motel. I mean, you can't get your money out. Okay. And so I think in the current financial environment that we find ourselves in the country and the world, that liquidity will have a higher value than it might have had in the past. And I'm just paying attention to that. So I'm not saying I won't do more startups. I will, but I'm extremely selective about them.
Are you finding that you have less of an interest of working very closely? Well, not an interest. I don't want to use the word interest, but as much as is your motivation still the same? That I want to work with these guys. I want to be in there, and it still is. So you're still very busy. You have 14 deals, and you're a busy dude.
And some of those are passive deals. They're not all active. But yeah, I mean, I'm still active with
the 2 deals that you did. Are you the lead investor where you're actually defining term sheets, or?
In the follow-on round, one of them was a first round, and I was not. The second one, I was not the first money in, but I am very active in this current round that we're about to close.
Well, that's fabulous. Well, you're man, you are involved in so many things. I have so much respect for you, and how when you decided, I really want to get deeper into this cryptocurrency. You made one comment about healthcare. You said, I don't invest in healthcare. I don't want to learn about healthcare. I'm not interested in it, right? Yet when cryptocurrency came along, you went way deep.
Well,
And so you
yeah.
really learn, you really have a view of where it's going, why it's going there. What are the key?
Well, I do now. There was a time when I'm like, the government's going to shut this down. Governments are not going to give up. And
Yeah.
there was, they're going to regulate all the things you hear now. I've been through that. That's where I was in 2017. I'm like, I'm not buying anything I don't understand. But then when I had this time to myself when the pandemic hit and we were all kind of cooped up together, I used a lot of that time to go down that rabbit hole and to try to understand, why do people think this is important? And once the lights started coming on, then I placed some bets that turned out so far to be pretty good. So,
It's interesting.
but yeah. Yeah, I
Interesting.
want
But
to
I think that
be.
this proved what you did with cryptocurrencies. You have clearly made the transition, clearly, from operator to investor.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
That's
there is
true.
a wall now that you're never going back. This is where you are. I think this is
Only
really
one
cool.
of the companies that I invested in the last 10 years did I ever take an operating role, like an active operating role in.
Wow.
And I did that for a year and a half, and then we sold that.
Good for you.
And, yeah.
Well, this has been, we covered a lot of ground. We covered a lot of
I
okay.
think we went way over, Charlie. I don't
Well,
think anybody
we
can
did.
watch this.
Well, it's not that bad. By the time we started, we're at about 210 right now, but it is over. And I apologize for that. But thanks for doing this. This has been
Thank you,
fabulous.
Charlie. Always great to be
Has
with you. I
been
really
fabulous.
enjoy our relationship.
All right. Well, I'm going to close us out, and I'll say goodbye to you if you'll hang on for just a second. Thanks for joining the Charlie Paparelli Show. Thanks for being here to hear Greg Smith's story. It was fabulous, and there's so many different elements to it, from going from operator to investor, from executive to entrepreneur. I mean, all these different stages he went through. But one thing did strike me is he is very relational, and he does look for people to work with and to work alongside of and learn from. And I think that's a part of his success. So thanks for coming. Subscribe at paparelli.com, and look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.